Hello, everyone. Welcome to Senioropedia, the everything how-to guide for seniors and caregivers. I'm Viraf Balawala, your host for today's episode, and I've got some sad news. A local community seniors food bank may have to close down. I've got with me Rose Edwards, the services delivery manager for Jane Alliance Neighborhood Services, and she's going to tell us all about this. Welcome, Rose. How
Thank
are
you.
you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well, thank you.
So tell us what's going on.
So, Jane Alliance Neighborhood Services, which throughout this conversation you might hear me refer to as JANS because I'm so used to calling the organization by its acronym, started food delivery to its seniors in 2019 at the height of the pandemic. That the food that we supplied was just 18 brown paper bags to seniors who were at the time vulnerable, scared to come out. And JANS being an organization that was once known as a seniors community center, naturally became concerned about the seniors and started that delivery program. Fast forward to today, JANS has a full-fledged food bank, food program that is supported by a few providers, food providers, including Second Harvest and Daily Bread, our two meal suppliers, and operations supported solely by Gin Alliance Neighborhood Services.
The operations, you mean the keeping the lights on, the rent, all those sort of expenses.
Absolutely. So I brought up the word operations as I talked about the food bank because often when food bank is spoken of, we think of the food. The food is what we think about. You have a food bank, the food people come to get food. But oftentimes, and I don't think it's intentional on the part of the community or others, you just don't think of the operations, which is someone who coordinates this whole process, the food, receiving the food, storing the food, coordinating the volunteers who come to, you know, distribute the food on the day of distribution.
And if I understand this correctly, the food is not the issue because you're getting a lot of supply for that,
Mhm.
but the funding to keep the lights on and pay for the rent and staff and those kinds of things is what is at risk at this point. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. The food I would say is not the main issue, although at this point Jans is at capacity. Given the state of the economy right now, you can understand why the numbers, as I said, we started with 18 brown paper bags. We are now serving 800, approximately 800 individuals in the community monthly. So
Hmm.
right now, every new person who walks into our door is served one time, but we are unable to register them because we are not able to. However, to address in terms of the funding for operations, we are unable to sustain the food bank because it's an added cost to an agency that is already a smaller agency. Jans is a smaller agency, and the funding is just not there to be able to pay a separate rent, and we have been doing it, as I said, since 2019. Sustaining it has been a challenge for our organization. So Jans never really had funding for the food bank per se, in terms of the operations per se. We have been supported sometimes by Daily Bread, and we are really grateful. They both distribute the food to us, and as well as funded sometimes the coordinator of that program. They're unable to because to sustain that because they themselves are a food bank. They are not a funder. They are a food supplier, and that came to an end. We now have operating by grace because last December we were about to shut our doors, and our seniors advocated for themselves, reached out to their MPs, to their MPPs. They advocated for themselves. They were able to really connect with someone, and the city has given us a one-time, 1 year means of keeping the doors open, but that is coming to an end in December. So every year it becomes a challenge. Are we going to be able to keep the doors open? And so we are constantly looking for ways to sustain the operations of the food bank.
Hmm. I imagine that any organization that is reliant on government funding faces the same sort of issues on a regular basis, right?
Yes, yes, they do. Programs are funded, and sometimes programs are not funded indefinitely. Some programs are funded for a year, some programs are funded for 3 years. It's for a period of time. What I say is that where funding no longer exists, the need of the community does not cease to exist where funding don't exist anymore. So
Right.
when this year's worth of grace that we were given through the mayor, and we thank her for that, for reaching out and extending that to us, when that comes to an end in December, we are back to square one. Do we shut the door of the food bank? And if we choose not to, how do we sustain it? How do we continue to pay the rent and keep that space going to be able to support the community at such a volatile time when food insecurity is at its highest as a result of the state of the economy? So we are always looking for ways and support ways that we can get support to keep the doors of the food bank open.
Well, I was always under the misconception that food banks are really government funded things that just keep going. Never as a consumer, I really wasn't aware of the fact that no, this is a program for this sort of thing. It lasts for so long, and then you have to keep going back for funding. And then with all the government cuts that are always happening, how do these organizations, especially the smaller agencies like yourself, who don't have the sort of branding that's out there as the bigger agencies do, how do you get that extra funding? How do you get people who are saying, yeah, let's give money to this particular organization rather than to larger ones? And the neighborhood ones, I feel, are the closest to the community. They're the ones who actually serve the local clientele the most.
And that is why I'm very happy to be having this conversation with you, because you're not alone. Most people just think that the government is providing you guys with the funds to do this for us. And sometimes they don't understand that we cannot. When we have to say to a client, it's the hardest thing for us when we have to say, we are going to serve you one time, but we cannot register you. We do not have the capacity to be able to take in more individuals. And so what we have done to keep our doors open is constantly reaching out, constantly there are persons who donate here and
Mhm.
there to our organization. We're always trying to find means as well to raise funds, reaching out to foundations, not always successful. And you raise a very important point. Smaller organizations, we are in the heart of the community, and it's not a competition between whether I'm a small organization or a large organization. All organizations, whether large or small, provide essential services to the community. However, smaller organizations being in the heart of the community, right there with the people, are sometimes overlooked because their name is not as out there as the larger organizations.
And so when these programs come out, I imagine it's like any other government thing. There's a request for proposal, RFP, that goes out, and then all these different organizations are all then submitting their proposals back, all looking for a piece of that funding amount.
Mhm.
And
Yes,
then whoever gets whatever allocation they get for it, then they can use it how they need to.
yes.
But the door's open in terms of the rent and the lights and the utilities, et cetera.
Absolutely. And proposals and fundings are not just given out and you do whatever you choose to with it. Funding may be given out for youth program, a funding may be given out for a seniors program, and that even if the funding is given out for a seniors program, it does not mean that you can do anything seniors. You would have proposed what you intend to do with that money, whether it is
Mhm.
to educate seniors about technology, whether it's for excursions, whether it's to do workshops on healthy aging. That fund that was given for that particular reason cannot then be used to do something else. It is
Okay, so whatever
specific.
your RFP is
Yes,
for and whatever
fundings
you
are
submit,
specific. Yeah.
it has to be
Yes.
used for that
That
specific function.
reason. Yes.
Okay, all right. Any, can you explain to us how this whole food distribution network works?
So as I mentioned before, our two major suppliers, and Daily Bread being the capacity in terms of the amount, the poundage of food that we get is from Daily Bread. And we have Second Harvest that has been our very first provider or supplier of food, together with United Way, who started with the brown paper bags. They supply the food. We now distribute the food, store, and with the help of our volunteers, distribute the food on once a week to our clients. We have some seniors who are not able to come to the food bank due to mobility issues, and we have volunteers who are volunteering their time to deliver to the door of those seniors. So we are really, really grateful. We have one paid coordinator. All of this work that we are doing, we have one paid coordinator who is coordinating the volunteers. And we know that we only have one person doing that. So there's much, much more. All of that to say that there is much more than just there's food at the food bank, and on one day a week people come and get food. There's so much happening behind the scenes, so much to keep the food bank in operations, both through the manual work that is being done and the operations in terms of keeping the doors open, the light, the space, and all of that stuff.
Hmm. Okay. So as a consumer, I would normally maybe go to the grocery store and they might have a little bin there where you can deposit some food and whatnot. Or I know that we've bagged things up and taken them over to the Daily Bread or Second Harvest Depot. And then, so they collect all of these things. In addition, some people may give it to you directly. Is that correct?
Yes, some people do. We have schools as well too who encourage young people, and I think it's a noble thing to encourage young people when they have certain campaigns to bring non-perishable items from
Sure.
home,
Food
and
drives.
those schools will then distribute to us. We do not want to discourage anyone who is shopping and decide, you know what? I noticed this box as I was coming in. Let me buy this extra item to donate to the box. We don't want to discourage that. However, I would say that if someone is thinking about donating to the food bank, I would suggest to reach out to organizations that runs a food bank,
Okay.
because the food is there. The
Right.
food is always there. The food is there. However, I would encourage in my sitting here today or coming out here today to speak and to sensitize and to bring awareness, I would encourage that if you're thinking of donating, that give some thought to donating to the operations, because oftentimes, as I said, people think of the food and
So
very little of the operations that's essential.
instead of buying and providing food to the food bank, if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is some or all of that, if you can give it to us in cash as a donation,
Yes,
then you
I
can
would say.
allocate that cash accordingly to operations as well as to food if you need it.
I would encourage that. I would encourage, having been someone who has seen firsthand what is happening with food banks and what is going on. I would encourage, if you can, if you have the capacity to do just more than one can or one pack of non-perishable, and you say, I'm giving some thought to donating somewhere, donating to a food bank, I
Hmm.
would encourage that you reach out to a food bank and donate in cash as
And
opposed to.
maybe as you've been explaining here, Google to see whether there's any local community food banks that may be able to be better able to serve that community directly and donate directly to them.
Donate directly to them. And while I'm at it, I would say JANS or Jane Alliance Neighborhood Services. Through our website, you are able to donate. We are also located at 909 Jane Street, Suite 205. We do give a tax receipt if your donation is $20 or more. We really, really need this food bank, and we get to keep this food bank open for the people of the community, particularly the most vulnerable among us, the seniors.
For sure. Rose, thank you very much for educating us on the issues and the whole process. Again, I was having some misconceptions about everything. So thank you very much for educating us and coming on and talking about your challenges there. And hopefully we can help drive some more support your way.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you.
You take care.
Thanks.
If you like this episode, then subscribe, like, share, and most importantly, register for upcoming notifications at senioropediya.com.